to say goodbye.
How you doing?
So, how are you?
I wasn't off the
Yeah.
Sit on, and it was like.
So I think by the time this comes out on the Blu-ray, it'll be close to 10 years since this movie came out. Wow. You were the first person, I think, on the project with me.
I think I was.
I remember being holed up writing for almost a year, developing it, and coming up with the title, Finding Nemo. And I remember being in that same office and coming up with the image of an egg left in the sand. It didn't have connections to its relationship now, but I remember having those.
I remember talking also a lot about when you're snorkeling, coming to the edge of the reef and then looking at that expanse of blue that goes down and just how you feel.
Yeah, the idea of like the void. I kept calling it the
always
void.
there, yeah.
Void, yeah.
It's like, how do you visualize something that isn't there? You know, it's like,
Go, Ralph. There we go. There's your job. But I remember it's like I felt it was the perfect metaphor for life. It's like infinite possibilities, and you have every reason to be afraid of it.
So friends of mine, I did not know, they always skipped the first chapter. Whenever they show, and then there's one Thanksgiving, we're all hanging out, and Kimber's going, we gotta, you know, somebody keep the kids busy. So I went over and they said, oh, we want to see Nemo. So
I see where this is going.
I threw the disc in and hit play, and then, you know, she comes running, no, don't play the first. Don't play. The kids are just like,
Scarred them.
Yeah. That is a pretty tough scene, though.
terms of the intensity?
Yeah.
You know, I never, ever, ever, ever doubted it. Unless you're remembering something I don't. I
Well,
don't remember
I
ever
mean,
doubting. I mean, we might have adjusted
careful.
the way we did it, but just the scene itself, I
Yeah.
never doubted it. I don't know. As a writer, I took it as a challenge. Like, look at, we all worry about our kid crossing the street, possibly getting hit. We all worry with them being out of our sight the minute they turn the corner and we don't see them. And we all know nature is a predatory world, and that pretty much 24/7 something's out there trying to hunt, trying to get. And so I loved the challenge of like, can you work within the real rules of nature, because it's much more truthful, and Bambi did it.
Coral?
And the minute I put it in that space, it's much more interesting to go, how do you deal with that if that is the truth? And you're the person trying to still raise a kid. So that was really was the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
I knew there were so many other flavors of what a Pixar film could be. Yeah. And that this was, and I was pretty sure this could be one of them. And that if we were lucky, it would give license to do that even more.
we were pretty cognizant of that. I mean, we talked
Yeah.
about it a lot, that we were kind of owning that, and the sort of emotional tone of this film.
Which is again so interesting because that was the first time I remember a lot of naysayers publicly saying this is going to be Pixar's first flop. I mean,
Yeah, there was a lot
it doesn't
of that.
look like it's any
People
good.
don't remember that, but there was a lot of that.
The other problem on that movie, if we can talk about it, is just that, you know, Nemo wasn't the kind of the big sexy film at
No.
the time being made. The Incredibles, Brad was making The Incredibles, and everyone just knew that that was going to be an amazing looking movie, and everyone was excited about it, and people weren't quite so sure about Nemo.
10 years ago, we didn't know. Well, actually, it was 14 years ago, right, when we started or something, that we
99.
didn't know if we could even sell it to ourselves.
Right. Internally, let alone could
Yeah.
we do it. And I remember thinking then that this was a perfect medium to execute underwater. But I knew nothing about fish. The reason I came up with clownfish was because we were getting all these catalogs because we had little kids in our house that used to start getting all this crap kind of stuff. And there was always this orange fish with 2 white stripes as one of the icons that tended to be in towels and on wallpaper. And I'm like, wow, this is used a lot. And it made me want to know what kind of fish that was. Got a coffee table book, opened it up, and there's these 2 fish sticking out of an anemone. And it already looked like a parent-child. And I found out they were called clownfish. And it was just kind of from then on, it was like, done.
so that's the beginning of the idea. Now we had to do a lot of research. And one of the things we had to do as a group was take scuba lessons.
Who went to the
Classes
Monterey
here.
trip? Did you? No.
I was already certified on that.
You
before that,
backed
but-
out of
Yeah,
that? So it was just the 2 of
we did
us?
we did our classroom here at Pixar. And we were like so excited we're going to go in March. to Monterey. We wore these 5 mil suits in which you gain in warmth, you lose in mobility. So we're like the Michelin men underwater.
I remember looking out there and thinking they were all professionals. And then we go out, like awkward Darth Vader's like, getting out in there and realizing, no, these are all people trying to learn and they're all trying not to drown and they're all trying not to, and I'm trying not to let them grab me and pull me down. It was like the worst
It
scenario.
was so awful. And what was great, of course, is when we went to Hawaii, you jump in, it's like a giant swimming pool.
Wasn't there a trip where you got sick?
So before most people showed up, you were diving in Maui, the backside of Molokini, which is a sheer drop-off. And on the boat, I'd taken my seasickness pills, which I hadn't taken quite early enough in the morning. And we went down for a dive, and you go off a ledge just to the abyss. Got back on the boat, I'm blah, 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 blah. blah, 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 blah. Mid-sentence.
You did it so
kept on
casually that
trucking.
I was like, did I just see what I thought I saw?
You always eat bananas and drink fruit juice on a dive boat because they taste the same going in as they do coming out. At which point everybody
right,
poured fruit
this
juice.
interview's
bananas,
over.
and that's it. All right.
This interview's
Good tip.
And I didn't get to dive with you guys. But at the end, we went to Australia to do press, and we didn't want to say that we had never gone diving on the Great Barrier Reef.
Right.
So I got certified on the Great Barrier Reef, which was pretty awesome.
When we got to Sydney Harbor to go to our hotel, and there were all these seagulls everywhere, and they're all going, mine, 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 and we're like, that's them. It's like meeting like the star of the movie. We're like, that's them. Here they are.
But just even the look of Sydney Harbor at night, I had that feeling that you get when you get to visit a movie set.
And originally, the Seagull flight took place through the city, which we could have done, but when you're in the middle of something, you don't get a good view of it.
Yeah.
And I went on a tour around Sydney Harbor, and I was suggesting maybe we set it across the bay. You look across the bay, and you have what most people know of Sydney: Needle, Bridge, Opera House. If you didn't have those three things, you wouldn't know where you were.
Right.
The first research trip I got to do, this is when, if you're on Ratatouille, you get to go eat in, 3-star restaurants in Paris and all that stuff. Our first trip was to the sewage treatment plant. They showed us how the whole thing worked. And then Andrew goes, okay, I've got a question for you. If a little clownfish came in right here,
Basically, no, it would never make it.
No.
It's funny that you did that whole research trip to the sewage treatment plant.
Then we cut it out.
Well, when I came onto the movie, one of the very first things that I did was suggest that you cut that whole sequence out.
How much did I fight you?
I remember.
Long pause.
I think there was a long pause at the lunch, and then you agreed at that lunch that it probably
Well,
could
some of the
come
same
out.
components of that going through that system ended up in the escape sequence through the tank and the filter system. So
that's right.
you got a
We
little bit
stole
of
a
that
little of
back
that,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, it's just interesting. It happens on every film that we make. You have sequences that you just think are absolutely necessary. And it's sometimes not till you get the whole thing up, and even a lot of it animated, and you really see what you have, that you come to realize that something's just not needed. Right?
I mean, I know myself enough now that I probably go overboard with that stuff on the third act because what you don't have the objectivity to see is what you can afford to lose.
When you get to a certain point, fresh horses always seems to be helpful. I mean, you came in a little bit later, I came in a little later. A lot of our successful films have been when you have someone coming
People come in fresh.
later who haven't been on it, nothing's precious to, and they're...
Because one of the first things I did when you had me come on in the movie was I went back and watched every version of the movie. But the only thing I remember specifically that you had taken out that I argued to put back in was having Nemo actually say, "I hate you,"
I hate you.
because that had been jettisoned along the way.
I mean, if you remember when you guys came on, I had hit a wall. It was a tough fall for me. I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with the movie, and I was getting to this dangerous place where I was questioning, fundamentals of the movie.
But at the same time, I don't think we had a morale problem internally because we were so excited about it.
And we did have a good time.
Absolutely.
And that really seeped into the film, I mean, one of the special moments for me in the film was just a night where we stayed late and we needed to figure out how does marlin out in the ocean communicate to a kid in a fish tank? And just guerrilla filmmaking, we wrote it, we stood up, we recorded it, thought of characters on the fly. Hey, Bob, that whole lobster thing and the dolphins going, these two little fish have been, and just crafted that, and it was a blast. It was essentially one night, staying late.
Another similar thing that I remember, we were in art review one day. You were talking about the crabs, and you started, and then there's these seagulls and they go, mine, mine, mine. And to stop the art review, you reach in your pocket and you wrote something down. I'm thinking it must have been that. And then you put it back in.
And he ran down. You were so excited. You ran into the room. I got it for the seagulls. I was up in art. It's like, you know how seagulls, they're on the beach, they're very selfish, and they steal. What if they just said, mine, and it came down from our review.
But I remembered Jason doing that,
On like a paper towel.
and we pretty much took exactly that. That's the seagull.
Mine.
One of the things I remember, the jellyfish scene was coming along, but something about it for you wasn't working. It felt perfectly perfect. I just remember reaching over and going, click, click. So suddenly we were in the middle of a scene, it was zoomed in, and you were only seeing parts of the characters.
Yes.
And you said, that's it. That's what
it.
I want. We shouldn't be able to follow them perfectly.
Right, we should be always trying to find them.
Boing, boing, boing,
Dory!
boing, boing. You can't
Dory!
catch me.
Jellyfish. Got it. I'll remember to tell him. Hey, wait
You want to
up.
talk about working with Ellen DeGeneres? And
I spilled my lunch on her shoes when I first met her. I walked up and knocked my lunch on her shoes and then started to try to wipe her shoes off. She's like, Bob, step away from the shoes. So I backed up. And she was amazing because she's just so nice. I mean, she remembers everybody's name from the lowest to the highest and just...
Remember,
It's just something
you
to look
lost
forward to.
the family battle over the 2 kittens.
Oh, yep.
6 months later or whatever. So how'd the kittens work out?
Yeah.
My favorite line of hers in the movie that we cut out was in the scene where Marlin and Dory are slowly approaching the anglerfish.
Grandma? Is that you?
Oh, yeah.
And it made me laugh. It made me laugh so hard, but it was kind of weird. And remember, we were debating whether we should use it or
We kept it in
not.
for a while because it kept cracking us up, but it didn't crack other people up.
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling a little part of me died when I took it out. because-
I remember you stepping on an Albert joke.
In a session?
Yes, and you could never get Albert
never got it
to
again.
redo something twice. Albert would give you just reams of great stuff, and then you'd find yourself never getting the line that was written on the paper. So he gets up in front of what looks like the mic just to do a joke.
Oh, well, I actually do know one.
And he goes, there's these 2 mollusks, and they're walking. Oh, he didn't walk! And he like sort of stopped himself. And you burst out laughing on that. And we never did it again.
There was a sea mollusk, and he didn't walk. Why do I keep thinking that?
Yeah, well, you stole a stapler in 4th grade, so I heard about that one. Well, he was great because he kept trying to get this reaction out of us, and obviously we'd laugh a lot. He'd go on to the next line, and they'd go, oh, I know how to do it, and he'd go back 3 lines before and do it again. You know?
I remember Albert leaving at the ends of sessions. He would head out to his car, and we'd start talking, and a moment later the door would open. He said, I was thinking about that line.
And he came right back. Yeah.
Check to see that the coast is clear. We go out and back in. And then we go out.
Yeah, so let's talk about Nemo poking his head out of the anemone for a minute, because those shots were a special joy for all of us to play with.
Is that what you would consider the biggest burden on the film?
When we started working on the anemone for a while, we had spent, I don't know, a year and a half on research on getting surgeons told to move right. And then somebody said, hey, on monsters that are doing fur, so why don't we take a tennis ball, stick a bunch of foot-long fur on it, and turn gravity upside down? We're like, oh. And we had an anemone the next day for review. You're like, wow, there's an anemone. Great. And so we were grinding to a stop, and then out of left field came a solution from a different film. Best bit of trivia, though, did anybody know how we did the sandy bottom?
So you didn't actually film somebody's sandy bottom. 'Cause that's what I thought that's what it was.
Upside down ocean surface. That sandy bottom is,
Oh,
a,
you're
frozen,
kidding,
is a
really?
frozen ocean surface.
I had no
Really?
idea.
That is really cool.
Yeah. I just want to toss one thought in about Steve Jobs for a second.
You had a lot of involvement with us on this film.
Yeah. I remember him coming by and taking a look at some of our very first water simulation tests. Some of the first decent looking water coming back and just kind of, wow, this is pretty amazing stuff. And it was just so energizing getting that from him, because then he could start to see what the film was going to do from that side as well.
One of the other things that I find very impressive is the level of acting and animation in the film. Because one of the things Andrew was adamant about from day one
I seem to be
is.
adamant a lot in these things.
Do I? Well, you were.
I was.
And it was good. It was just that he didn't want overly anthropomorphized fish. Yes, they had to act. Yes, they had to express things. I mean, there is a story to tell.
Yeah, could you use the grammar of natural fish motor movements?
And that's a very limiting thing with these fish. I mean, it's a face on a body.
I mean, how do you this is all you got, right?
But it was a big challenge for the animators. But they also then had to deal with the idea of gravity and density, which they did superbly while acting.
You love when the animators would go, oh, there's basically two types of swimming. There's rowers and there's flappers.
Right.
Just to suddenly find those keys.
Those little
They just help you so much. The amount of like firsts that came with this film, I mean, not only from what made it on the screen, but what had to go behind the scenes to make all that was, I mean, we completely reorganized the pipeline of how we made a movie for Nemo.
I remember getting in discussions with people saying, well, no, that's not how you make a computer animated. It's like, okay, there's only ever been 5 of these things, and we did them all. So if there are some rules, we can break them.
Exactly.
For me personally, working on it and then seeing it come to life in the computer with all the artistry, it's almost as if I didn't work on it, because it's like this whole other thing, better than you could possibly imagine. And then, of course, to see it come out and be such a success was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I know I'll never work on anything that will be as long-lasting and in the zeitgeist as Nemo was. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It was like double what we would have even let ourselves imagine it could be like.
Well, you would never enjoy it. I remember I had so
There's a
much
reason that father's like he is in the movie, Marlon.
I had so much confidence in the movie by the end.
I did not.
And you would not accept.
I'm so superstitious.
I know, but you would not allow yourself to think that we had something good on our hands. I mean, it was like pathological.
Well, all my 3 kids were born after the film, so they've come to the movie now. It's a thing that's part of the culture in the playground and discussed at kindergarten, and describing the characters and speaking whale is stuff that they just do.
I don't know, something about the fish and stuff, people use it as terminology.
When you go to any aquarium and you walk up to a clownfish, someone will yell, Nemo, and I've never been on a beach where someone hadn't said, mine, mine, mine.
That one stuck.
You're sitting at your desk doing this, and then somehow it's out on a beach.
Internationally, it's in the lexicon of aquarium viewers now.
Well, when I'm in an aquarium now, you know, the kids will be saying, hey, there's a Nemo, and there'll be like a manta ray flying around. I go, hey, it's a Mr. Ray over here. You know,
I thought we were going to hear some Mr. Ray right now.
oh, nah, later, okay?
I'm still getting emails with sushi and Nemo.
Yeah.
No.
Remember that first game?
Oh, it was funny the first 7,000 times.
Wasn't there, like, when we were doing press before the movie came out, the #1 question we were always asked is if we were going to have sushi at the wrap party.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
That's right.
Which we did.
For me, looking back at the film now, watching it with my kids, I see the film, but I also see all the people and the work that went into the film when I watch it. So it's as if for, you know, almost 2 hours you're watching a yearbook playback.
The most interesting screen of a film is the one where the whole company would come and they just applaud at the strangest time. Like, here's a shot. Oh, look, there's 10,000 jellyfish. Whoa! Because they know how hard that was.
If you still got something in your cups, I'd say cheers to 10 years, and let's hope we're still talking about it 10 years from now. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
You're adamant about that.
I'm adamant about it.